Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Tiffany St. James. I'm a social media strategist. Though after listening to the last panel, them saying that social media strategy and agencies actually increase the size of your genitalia, I'm never going to introduce myself as such again. It's my great pleasure in moderating this session on edutainment, where education meets entertainment. So in the next 30 minutes, we're going to be showcasing some innovations that are transforming education both in the school and in the home, and looking at how kids are learning differently today. We've got some awesome presenters, which I will introduce in just one second. But, you know, we've known that interactive content is grown up. If you've played or experienced delving into things like Pottermore, the Harry Potter's world, or even at lunch earlier today, the Canada Media Forum showcasing Brambleberry Tales and Les Jumelles. But more than that, we've looked at the work that Bjork has been doing with biophilia. We're taking kind of science and music and allowing children to play with this content in schools. And we've seen, you might have been fortunate enough to trip across the work that Young Rewired State have been doing. We're getting together kids that have interest in coding already, to put them together, to build a network and kind of foster those coding abilities both in the UK and overseas. We've got a short video we're just going to play now, just on the New York chapter, one of the smaller chapters of Young Rewired State. If we just roll that video, please.
We're bringing together the coding youth of NYC, and now they are here for their very first hackathon that we've hosted in the area. We have girls as well as boys. They've been building games, apps, websites, really anything.
We're making a game with restaurant violations.
I'm making a website where you can search events that are happening in New York.
Graffiti places they should go.
Create bike routes to different film locations throughout the city. And it will respond with a text of all the information about the movie.
Creating sounds like to scoring.
We got ideas?
Yes.
There are 7-year-olds who are adept JavaScript coders that are opening up the Chrome Inspector Toolkit and setting breakpoints in their code and testing it like a professional.
I think it's really cool how with computer projects you can make a project in such little time, in like 24 hours, and have something that works.
The second that it works, it's like the happiest feeling ever. You're doing something that not many other people can do, and it's kind of really amazing.
Part of the awesome thing about technology is it can really bring people together from all parts of the world. Have this network really across the globe is awesome.
Everyone here, we're beginners at one point just like you, and this day and age it's such an amazing skill to have. So if you're at all interested or you think you may be, try it out and see if you like it.
So it's my delight to introduce our panelists. In this session that we're exploring today, we'll have a short presentation from each of them and some short direct questions. As before, you've all got the opportunity to meet the speakers in the salon next door directly after this, so please do come and meet us after the session and put questions directly to our presenters. We've got a lot of information to be able to share with you. So I'm going to introduce them as a group and then each individually and with those questions directly to them. So we have at the very end here Nick Walters, the founder of Hopster from the UK, Deborah Elalouf, the CEO from Tralalere, based in France, and Scott Chambers, the SVP Worldwide Media Distribution for the Sesame Workshop from the USA. So I'm going to hand over to Nick, first of all, to tell us a little bit more about Hopster. Nick has been described as the Netflix for kids. Over to you, Nick.
Thank you. As Tiffany says, I run this new startup called Hopster. We've been going for just about bang on a year now, just had our first birthday. And we are basically a bunch of guys who come either from a kids' TV background or from a strong digital media background. And we set ourselves the sort of modestly stated ambition of reinventing the preschool kids' TV channel and turning it into something which was designed natively for touchscreens. And by virtue of being for touchscreens, was a real pleasure to swipe through and explore and find lots of different types of content, some of it from us, some of it licensed in from other people, and create a place where kids could not just watch, as they would do with a conventional kids' TV channel, but also play and also learn and grow and develop. and create something that really used the power of touchscreens to create something that was a real learning experience. So what that means for us specifically is that we are purely preschool kids focused. That's all we do. Just focus on the ages of 2 to 6. And at launch, we will be launching with a really high-quality selection of premium, best-of-the-best preschool kids TV shows. So we've recently announced deals with some people like DHX and Nelvana for Emmy-nominated, BAFTA-winning, really top-quality shows. But what we then do around that is build a whole curriculum of learning interactivity, which is almost like we took out the ads from a kids TV channel and replaced it with learning games. So at the end of every video, we're going to try and get the kid to lean forward, do something interactive, and play a game which is influenced by the content that they've been watching. And we recreate this whole experience with a channel within a single app for touchscreen devices, launching in the UK in November later on this year. And that's really us. Thank you.
So, Nick, one thing for you really is, so what do you consider the differences are between kind of pure media, pure entertainment, and then more educational content?
Yeah, I mean, I think there are, in a direct-to-consumer digital world, the permission to play for anyone who's interested in educating children is engagement. If you can't engage children, then you can't educate them, you can't help them learn. And obviously what media does incredibly successfully, the background that we all come from, is about engaging children. It's about building that engagement. So I actually think there's, the fundamental principles are increasingly becoming quite similar. And actually, even beyond that, within lots of my favorite kids' TV shows, even in a straight-up linear episode of TV content, there's really strong learning messages already. And you'll see that one of the things that Hopster does when we report back to parents, we don't just report back to them on what games their kids have played or what achievements they've hit. We also tell them these are the learning lessons implicit within the TV shows that your kids have seen, that your children will have been exposed to. So I think there's real commonalities in the starting point already. That said, there are specific differences. It is important that you have you get curriculum right. It is important that you have a really clear understanding of how cognitively children engage with games and how they're going to respond to different types of the product. So a big part of the learning curve for us has been researching that, working with child development specialists and academics to really try and build that out.
That's really good to hear, Nick. Thank you. So I'd like to now hand over, if that's okay, to Deborah Elalouf, the CEO of Tralalere France. Deborah's transforming education in France. And Deborah, please, can you tell us about some of the work of Tralalere?
Sure. So we started Tralalere in 2000 with one purpose, which was put new media at the service of education, with two initial beliefs. The first one was that digital content was rarely as clever as children, although I saw some apps today that tell the contrary. So we just wanted to reach the level of intelligence of children. And the second one was the belief that behind each child there is an adult, and whether it's a parent or a teacher. And so our goal is to address first the child, but then always have in mind the adult behind. So 3 targets, preschoolers, preteens, teens, and these 2 other parents, teachers, educators. That means a double network of dissemination for our products, which is public at large on the one hand, working with traditional broadcasters, with online broadcasters, and second network, which is in fact often our first network in terms of impact, which is educational networks, formal and informal education. Concretely, we create cartoons for cross-media productions, serious games, not so silly games, apps, e-books, enriched e-books. So a lot of different media, but with one common know-how and goal.
Okay, thank you very much. It's, is there anything else that you'd like on this deck about Tralalere before I go into questions with you?
Maybe just a few images of what we're doing for the different age brackets. This is a serious game for teenagers. this is more awareness program for 7 to 12 years old children, including plenty of different features, linear and interactive programs, and this is for younger younger kids in project. One of the things we saw about this double dissemination process was that we had the programs I showed here were distributed through these two canals. So, and we thought that TV would have a major impact on the know-how. The program which was presented in the middle of the two is known by every French kid in France who went to primary school, and this is first thanks to the use within the educational networks.
Okay, thank you. It's very helpful. Nick touched on it just slightly in terms of about the people you might involve, but I'd like to ask you, how do you approach the development of your content?
Three things to tackle this question. One is, I said, our job was cross-media for education. So cross-media, we believe in a complementary cross-media approach to production. Each media has its advantages and its limits, and we believe that the key thing is to build the right circle, which is going to bring one media to the other. And the second thing is that we anticipate the kind of use that is going to be made of our content. Is it going to be a single use, the child alone facing the screen? Is it going to be co-viewing, child and parent at home? Is it going to be co-viewing within a collective context in the classroom? Often we try to address all of these uses and anticipate it. The second thing is, as I was mentioning before, age groups. Obviously, we don't build the same contents for 3 to 7 years old or for teenagers. So each of them has specificities. For preschoolers, the rhythm of interactivity, for example, is a key thing. You don't want them to click everywhere, which is the first reflex of someone coming into interactivity. And touch screens, as Nick was putting it, is also a specificity, and you don't conceive the same way. For pre-teens, learning and being active is a key objectives, and for teenagers, I would say that putting them in a place to face choices, so interactivity and personalization would be a key thing. And then in terms of, the third thing is term of process of how we produce our content. We always start building up a scientific committee with a team of experts who are far more clever than we are on the subject we choose. And their role is they have a power of life and death on all the contents we develop. But they're not allowed to say, I don't like blue. Because on the other hand, there's a creative committee who makes this kind of decisions and whose role is not to listen too much to the scientific committee in order to touch the child, whatever the means, whether it's poetry, humor, but it has to address the child directly. So a good project manager at Tralalere is someone who can do the splits between, on the one side, having undoubtable, unquestionable contents in the end, and on the other hand, have content which is perceived by the child as an entertaining moment and make that he wants to see more in the end.
Thank you, very comprehensive, and we've heard that a lot, I think, over the last 2 days here at MIPJunior, particularly about involving first the scientific community or the psychology, right, and then balancing that with the creative, a tough line to walk, I'm sure. So thank you very much for that. That was very interesting. We'll come back to some more open questions at the end, if that's okay. So next, we have Scott Chambers, Senior Vice President for Worldwide Media Distribution at Sesame Workshop. Hello there, Scott.
Why, hello there, Tiffany.
So Sesame Workshop is a non-profit organisation behind Sesame Street, providing educational and learning resources through TV as well as many other medium. Scott, would you like to introduce the Sesame Workshop?
Yeah, I've got a quick video that I'll show that is, I think, sort of, it encompasses what we've been doing for the last 44 years, which is remarkably similar to what these guys are doing now. So I think maybe it's best to start with a video. Just coming up now. It is amazing, actually, how similar, though, the workshop is to exactly what Tralalere and Nicholas are doing, using new technologies to educate young children. So there are a lot of similarities.
I think it's just been teed up now. Perfect.
In 1969, one little street launched a revolution in children's education by using television as a tool for learning. Over 40 years later, the most trusted brand among parents continues to meet children's educational needs through new and emerging technology.
Oh, I'ma keep my head up high, keep on reaching high, never gonna quit, I'll keep getting stronger.
From our award-winning television show,
Welcome to Sesame Street.
to our award-winning website,
You're here! Yay!
Sesame Street is a safe place where parents and kids can watch videos, play games, and much more.
Okay, hang on a minute. I'll help you find the really right one. We go.
Learning can even happen on the go with our mobile site customized for portability. Our top-rated podcasts offer a wide range of teachable moments, from letter recognition and vocabulary to math and science concepts.
How do you design a rocket?
Let's find out!
Oh boy!
Sesame Street mobile apps make learning fun and interactive.
Hi, I would like to talk to you. Yeah, you!
By expanding our reach through interactive applications and mobile content, Sesame Street is reaching and educating millions of children around the globe. And everyone can follow their furry friends on Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube.
We did it! We did it! 1 billion! We made it to 1 billion! And it's all because of you!
The little street that began it all is not so little after all. Every day, Sesame Street continues to look for new, innovative ways to make learning fun, engaging, and accessible so that children all over the world may reach their highest potential.
I'll keep getting stronger.
So I think a brand very familiar to all of us. But one of the interesting things in taking that medium, Scott, is, and something that we discussed, how can you really maximize a child's learning pathway?
We do it, actually, and we've been doing it for 44 years, the same way that Deborah and Nicholas were just talking about. So there's a very rigorous approach to first identifying a need, specifically targeting preschoolers, at least in Sesame Street's case. And then we pull in experts. We pull in a panel, which is exactly what Deborah was alluding to, of people who are much smarter than we, who help us answer questions that we didn't know the answers to. We develop a curriculum around that content, but then to Nick's point, the curriculum isn't useful at all if the content isn't engaging. So we do a lot of research around whether or not the audience, the preschool audience in this case, is in fact engaged and entertained by the content, because they won't learn if they aren't. I think it's also ironic that so Nicholas alluded to taking out the ads in content and replacing it with games that's connected to the video experience. And it's those ads, actually, that inspired the original version of Sesame Street. Joan Gans Cooney, our founder, looked at the way, at the time in 1968, I guess, kids were so easily memorizing the jingles to commercials. She thought, well, I wonder if we can use this new device called the television to actually teach them things other than jingles. So it was the advertisements that actually inspired Sesame Street. And in fact, it's what also inspired these segments called Brought to You by the letter A or whatever. They're supposed to be advertisements for letters. So I think it's sort of incorporating a curriculum, developing content that's engaging, and then testing. We do a lot of testing. We're probably in focus groups or classrooms or homes once every 3 weeks with various audiences, trying to learn what they understand in terms of these new devices. I think we've done over 70 studies on touch screens alone, so it tells you how new that is. So we're constantly learning. It's more than, I guess, the preschoolers learning. It's about us learning about their learning. And it's this constant iterative process of trying to improve and engage and teach. So. long
Thank
answer.
you.
Yeah.
No, but exactly right. So what we're seeing here from everyone is that adults need to do their homework in looking at what are the, not the engaging mechanisms first, but the scientific research first, which is an interesting way of looking at it. So what trends are you seeing in platform access then?
New trends every day. I feel like, I think we were just joking earlier, I wake up every morning to some new platform, new company, new trend, new numbers. So it's this constant digestion of information. So we try to stay on top of it. What we're seeing, I guess, broadly speaking, is multi-platform growth. So, for example, just in the US alone, Sesame Street as a television show is accessed from multiple platforms, i.e. watched on television via PBS, seen as clips on YouTube, and perhaps accessed via our own website or Netflix. So that percentage of our total audience was about 24% of this sort of mishmash of platforms. In less than 2 years, that's more than doubled. So we've got an audience that is now accessing via multiple platforms Sesame Street content over 55% of the time. So, and that's just doing nothing but grow. So for us, the answer is, I guess, more experiments. So we're constantly experimenting with, new partnerships, new devices, new platforms, new ideas, and new content. Not all the content is right for all the platforms. So to try to re-engineer even our production staff to be able to think through, these various iterations and experiences as they're trying to produce this one thing called a television show is very, very hard.
Thank you. That's really helpful. And I think there's some great advice for producers in this room, which we'll come on to now. Nick, before I ask you what advice you can give to TV producers considering this area, I know that you and I talked about designing for the touchscreen mechanism and your point of view on that.
Yeah, I think touchscreens we're right at the start of seeing how fundamentally touchscreens are going to change and transform particularly young children's use of media. And we as Hopster, we're positioned in response to that, really, that we're the first of a new generation of services designed for touchscreen first and designed natively for touchscreen. And what touchscreens do, obviously, is they really let you put two screens in one. Everyone used to talk a lot about, can we make second screen work? Does second screen work for younger children? The beauty of a touchscreen is you can create this incredibly natural, beautiful, seamless experience of moving from a video to a piece of interactivity and back to a video again. And I think it's going to change the whole concept of how we think about videos and games and what types of content we're producing as we really start to get a critical mass of not just of devices out there, but also of platforms serving those devices. It's going to really open up a lot of new opportunities for people to do really interesting and innovative things with their content.
Thanks. That's a great point of view. What advice do you have for TV producers in this area?
I guess I would have kind of two sides of the same coin. The first is a very positive side of the coin, which is, I think there are, as I said right up front, I think as a TV producer with great content, you bring tremendous assets to an educational or a learning product as well. You're good at engagement, you're good at storytelling. We know that children learn best when education is built into some kind of story or some kind of narrative. So I think a big part of the message would be, don't be afraid to get into that area, don't be afraid to experiment, seek out the right partnerships, be open to working with new partners and new platforms. The flip side of that is that I do think this space is changing very quickly, and I do think those who don't embrace that change and who aren't willing to experiment will find themselves significantly disadvantaged.
So, to get over that emotional hurdle of designing for education. But I know, Deborah, you had a point of view on that certainly too.
Maybe just a point to go further. Yes, don't be afraid to jump in the education world. Maybe a clue to mutualize know-how. And it could be co-production. First, the key thing for interactivity is to plan the conception before the production, the audiovisual production is done. I often see producers coming to me saying, oh, I produced this great series, how can you add a little bit of interactivity and educational stuff so that it addresses the educational world? And I say, well, it would be better to consider this before rather than after. So I think that collaborations before the production of a series
Yes,
and
not as an
sometimes co-production can be a good solution to have a conception that has a meaning afterwards. And also for economic models, they have to be reinvented. So it's also a way to capitalize on different means for financing and for business models.
Sure, thank you. Thank you for that point of view. So Scott, how can people produce for multi-platform if they traditionally run linear video?
Right, I think it's clearly very challenging and sometimes very expensive. And I think the quick answer is nobody knows the answer to that, right? We're all in the throes of trying to figure it out. But we've been experimenting with some things. The Microsoft Connect device and experience was a platform that we recently experimented with. And that experiment involved taking our traditional linear video television production model and trying to incorporate interactive experiences into the scripts, into the concepts as we're shooting it. And I'll just tell you, it was very, very hard. The result, I think the end product is amazing. I can say that because I didn't produce it, so it's all these very smart people who produced it. But it really is a sort of a beautiful, seamless experience, which is what Nick was alluding to. But it's hard. I think you have to look at the individual platforms, and there are so many platforms and opportunities to get your content in front of your audience that, you know, I think the hard part is trying not to limit yourself and at least thinking through it. So you can look at social media platforms. I know that's an area that you have some expertise in. You can look at Vine or even Twitter, you know, as another means of reaching out to your audience. So as you're even conceiving of a TV show, think about ways in which you can speak to, and even more important, engage with this two-way conversation with your audience across these various platforms. So we're trying to do that more and more as we go into the studio. We'll shoot a segment that's good for a Vine loop, or we'll shoot just a video segment that's good for somebody else's social media platform, so they can sort of use their platform to talk about our content. So, you know, as ideas come to us for, you know, new shows or you know, new opportunities, it's really more than nice. It's critical that those ideas come with at least the ability to kind of stretch and reach audiences across different technologies and platforms.
Sure, that's a great approach, and so they're not just building within the ivory towers, but to be able to consult as well in development as well as iterative and innovations as well. Mm-hmm. Great advice for us all. I think we've got time for just one last question to the panel. So, Deborah, what do you consider when building content programs, particularly for an educational network?
The first thing, I would say that digital changed one major thing, which is break the wall between school and home, which means that you now have similar content that can go from one to the other. Among the users of young people when they're online and looking for information, looking for clips and looking for video games is a major thing. But just behind comes a recent French study shows that 74% of the children are looking for information for them or information for school. So my first advice would be take this into account. Parents are totally lost. Teachers are totally lost also, looking for good educational content. Or after all meetings I had here at MIPJunior, people told me, okay, that was our professional conversation, but I also have kids and I'm looking for good educational apps. Can you give me advice?
And a wealth showcase here.
Exactly. So I think we have a real thing to surf on from this. And one of the principles is to take into account before the conception the place that the adult within co-viewing will have, whether it's the parent or it's the educator. Take into account, as I was saying before, the different conditions of use of the content. Is it going to be, do we want to have an engagement for a 30-minute session on the content? Do we want it to be a glimpse of an in-between game between two different videos? Do we want it to be the child alone when easy babysitting at home? Or is it going to be something shared shared with the parent. Trying to take this into account before producing the content is a definitive good clue to enter into edutainment.
Wonderful, and I think some great closing remarks there. Ladies and gentlemen, we are actually to time. That is all the questions that we wanted to be able to discuss and share. However, I could have spoken personally with these speakers for an entire week, and we have the opportunity now to meet the speakers in the salon next door to be able to put your direct questions to them and meet them and say hi. So will you please join me and give them a big round of applause? Thank you very much.
Thank you.